Good evening, fellow ghouls, and welcome to Undeth Consumes. I am Undeth, and tonight's story, entitled Every Morning I Wake Up Screaming, while chilling, should also teach us that even though something may be terrifying on the surface, perhaps in some way something is trying to tell us something beneath. So light a candle, dim the lights, and get comfortable as we get ready to begin. For the past few months, my mornings have been a cycle of terror. In that space between sleep and wakefulness, before conscious thought kicks in and control is back in my hands, I am gripped with an all-encompassing fear and panic. The cries that escape me aren't the exclamations of one startled or jolted, but of one in a broken state of illogical and primal dread, like an injured and cornered street dog, wailing and yelping in the dim hope that the sound might somehow dissuade its attacker. It's difficult to bring to mind the memories of what runs through my mind during these spells. As I said, it always occurs the instant I'm awakened. That might not be entirely accurate. By the time I found myself aware enough to understand what is happening, I'm already screaming. That same autopilot that causes you to breathe, to unconsciously toss and turn in your sleep, forces me into this last-ditch state, screaming. The screams scare me. The times a person gives their all in terms of making noise, yelling, vocalizing, are far and few between. Few sane people would ever just cry out at the top of their lungs, for fear of noise complaints or the police being called for suspicion of some kind of murder taking place. Hearing those full-fledged, no bars, shrieking sounds from my mouth, and my instincts continuing them to the point of a whimpering stutter, leaves my chest tight and my heart racing. And like I said, I've gotten the noise complaints. I've had the police at my door. The only reason I've not been evicted is that I know my landlord personally. He knows what I've been through. I'm medicated. At first I was honest with the doctors and therapists I saw, but I was on track for getting locked up, so I started lying. I told them I couldn't sleep, that I was waking up in the middle of the night, but that's not true. I sleep as much as any regular person. It's just when I'm wakened that's the issue. How I'm wakened, I suppose. I've tried all kinds of sleeping pills to see if I could dull myself from shutting down that reaction, but after nearly dying from an overdose, I gave up on that idea. Whatever this is, whatever the cause is, it must be on the same level of my breathing, in how base, how core to my being it is. That scares me. I'm not crazy. I function as well as any other average person when it comes to day-to-day life. I hold down a job. I pay my bills. I have friends. It's just the mornings, where I wake up screaming bloody murder as if an air raid siren has just gone on. The timing of it seems to fall in line with my circadian rhythm. When my panic is over and I check my phone, it's usually only 20 minutes or so until my alarm goes off. I've always looked for patterns in it. I've researched REM sleep and sleep paralysis, and tried natural cures like meditating and scented candles, incense. But despite my best and most committed efforts, nothing changes. I don't want to consider anything drastic or logical. As I said, I am not crazy. I don't get used to it. Let me try to describe the process, a little slower and more meticulously. I get into bed. I fall asleep. I don't dream, or at least I don't remember the dream. My unconscious subconsciousness takes the wheel, and as is normal for a person, I have no memory of my time asleep. Then, all of a sudden, I'm thrust back into the driver's seat, but I'm already screaming at the top of my lungs, the effort of it leaving my breath shallow like I'm suffocating. But I'm already scrambling too. I'm already panicked and fighting, my heart racing. And it takes me a good few seconds before I have control, and I finally stop. I'm left panting, still overwhelmed with full-bodied dread, a fear of something. People watch scary movies and play horror games because it's controlled adrenaline, a fun rush that makes you jump. What I experience every morning is terror. It's not fun. It's horrid. More than anything, I wanted to stop. I woke up early last night, but I wasn't awake. Not really. Looking back on it now, I can't even tell if it was a dream or not. What I experienced was as follows. My eyes open. I was laid on my left side, facing the room. One hand resting in front of me on the mattress, right at the edge of the bed. The other under the blanket. I tried to shift to get more comfortable, but I was stuck. I've never experienced sleep paralysis before, but I knew well enough about it. Knowing didn't stop me from panicking. As a rush of terrifying stories came to mind I'd heard from friends and people online. I tried to suppress them as I sent commands to my hands, arms, and legs, my body ignoring the will I pushed towards moving, as my eyes looked forward, open. And while I was in the midst of this personal turmoil, I saw it. In the pitch darkness of my room, against the wall, was a shape, an outline, murky and black. I stared at it, my chest feeling cold as I tried to reason it away. This is exactly what they told me about. I just need to control my thoughts. Those were the words I told myself, trying to calm down. But then it started moving. The slow, methodical first steps it took towards me was what gave it more definition. Its body was jagged in shape, like something malnourished and thin. It had been about 5 feet in height when it stood against the wall, but as soon as it began moving, it stooped into a gradual slouch, like a predator moving low in the grass. It was painfully slow, creeping towards me, while giving my frozen body every second I needed to absorb. From the lack of light, discerning anything about it was difficult, but the closer it came with those methodical, yet bestial movements, the more I could see. Thin arms, bent at the elbows into long wrists that ended in hands with spindly fingers that would ever so slowly flex, curling inwards, but not quite into a fist, then stretching outwards again as if it were fantasizing about getting something between them. Its back had a distinct curve from the way that it stood, leading up to a distended neck, then a head that was just a little too large. Silent, creeping step after silent, creeping step, the thing drew closer to my bedside. All I could do was watch, praying in my imprisoned mind to whatever God would hear to let me wake up, to escape this paralysis and be rid of this torturous vision. Finally it stopped. standing inches from where I lay. It was so close now. I could hear strained, labored breathing from within the core of its chest. Only now, with it this close, did I realize its sheer size. If it were to stand up straight, I'm sure its bulbous head would reach the ceiling. The thing remained there, slowly rising from its crouched stance to loom over me. The sound of its rattling breath creaking like a ship at high sail. Those oversized hands still slowly, obsessively grasping at air, rose and reached towards me, whilst I was entirely unable to move. I still felt like I was shivering in fear, my vision blurring from tears of fear welling in my eyes. I could feel them. I could feel the long, cold, wet fingers close over my shoulders as it took a hold of me, its face coming nearer to mine. The thing smelt of blood and pus, foul and rotten. It took a long, slow inhale, and as it did, its mouth opened, splitting across the lower center of its head, with dripping lines of black, tar-like saliva that drooled down onto my bed sheets. And then it screamed. It screamed and began shaking me violently, throttling me as it shrieked and roared and wailed like the incarnation of every lunatic ever locked away. The sound so loud it should have burst my eardrums. The shaking so violent it should have broken my neck. I woke up screaming. I screamed my throat hoarse. Then I coughed and cried. Sitting up in my bed, I kept wheezing, barely able to breathe, then felt my stomach rise. Too weak to move, I vomited there on my bed, a splatter of sheer red. Another few coughs and I collapsed back, blood and bile trickling down my pale cheek as I lay there in a daze, panting raggedly. My eyes lazily turned to the spot the apparition had appeared in before, the screaming, rasping shade. Nothing. Of course, nothing. No sign it had ever been there. Then I winced, bringing my hand to my left shoulder, feeling across the spot it had held me. Bruises, midnight purple stains on my bare skin that ached to touch, a matching mark on each side. I refused to believe that thing was real. For the sake of my sanity and my ability to sleep ever again, I reasoned that to myself. Deep down, though, a part of me knows this isn't true. When my strength returned, I called off work and saw a doctor. I told her what had happened that morning, leaving out the details that would get me admitted, which prompted her to run several tests. She put me through a lung function test, then a chest x-ray, then a blood test. The same day, they performed a biopsy. A few hours ago, I was diagnosed with early onset lung cancer. Thanks to the near instant diagnosis, it's treatable. I still have a life ahead of me. That's why I'm grateful, despite the fear, the panic, and the trauma, that every morning I wake up screaming. Thank you for listening. I would like to thank Dylan Skeldrum for this chilling piece of writing. You will see a link to his Reddit in the video description. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe and ring the bell, as I will be uploading more scary stories soon. Sleep tight, fellow ghouls, and fear not the darkness. Until next time.